The holiday season is upon us, and in today's video I'm going to share with you a budget-friendly, not an extreme budget, but nevertheless a budget-friendly celebratory meal that you can cook up very easily. It's going to be for 4 people and we're going to make it as cheap, as healthy and as fun as possible for a 3-course meal. I know, let's dive in. A celebration does not need to be expensive to be celebratory and a little bit different. And in today's video, I'm going to take you along as I cook up a 3-course meal for 4 adults worth of food. It's not going to be an extreme budget, but it's still going to be very affordable and with ingredients that you can very easily pick up regardless where in Australia you live. And I think the cool thing as well is I love getting creative on a budget. As you know, you might have seen my many extreme budget challenges. If not, I will link the playlist up there for you as well as down below this video. So before we get into the menu and what we're cooking up today, please do go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my channel and it helps you see more of this stuff in your algorithm on YouTube if that is something that you like. I would also love to have you as a subscriber down there on the little subscribe and bell icon below this video. But let me tell you about what we're making and let's get cooking. So my goal was to create a very simple menu with not too much prep and nice wholesome ingredients that wouldn't be too expensive and also stuff that wouldn't take me too long so that I wouldn't have to slave away in the kitchen all day. So we're going to do a little bit of prep shortly and then we're going to cook up the rest of the meals just before dinner tonight. But for the starter, there are many different options you could do. You could do like a little seafood salad or something, but what I'm doing today is deviled eggs. And if you never made that before, it's very simple. So let me show you that as we get through this video today. So I have actually pre-boiled my eggs so that they are boiled and chilled and ready to go for that. So I did that this morning. For our main course, we're going to do 1 protein and 2 different sides. Now, if you live in Australia like me and you're having this around Christmas time, you might want to opt for cold sides because it can be quite warm outside. But it's been pretty cold up until recently. So today I'm mixing it up with a salad side and a potato oven bake, so like a warm side. So I'll show you how I do that. But you could go all in on salads or you could go all in on warm sides. So I'm going to give you options for this menu as I go through with some recipes that I have tried myself and really like. For our main, we're going to do chicken and bacon. I know that quite often this time of year you do a roast turkey or a roast chicken or a roast ham. And whilst that's really nice, the gist of it really is that we tend to have either poultry or pork if you're not plant-based, which I know many of you are, and of course you can do like a nut loaf or something else if that's the case for you. But I'm gonna do chicken thigh fillets wrapped in bacon. It's gonna be delicious and I have a new twist on it that I've never tried before, so stay tuned for that. Might be amazing, might not be. And we're gonna have a dessert. I'm gonna show you one of my favorite desserts, which is a really simple 4-ingredient coconut cake. But I have plenty of alternatives and options for you if that's not something that you want to bake. But we're going to have our deviled eggs, we're going to have our main with chicken, potato bake, a pumpkin and feta salad, and then we're going to have a cake for dessert. And this is going to feed 4 people quite easily. And I will do the full breakdown, of course, of all the costs and also all the options for this menu. So let's get festive, let's get excited and let's get cooking. Hi. All right, my cat is hungry for dinner, but here is the main ingredients that we are working with for today's feast. So I'll put all the prices here on the screen, but for our main protein, I'm using this bacon. This is from Aldi, and it was the best value that I could find there. You could also go to Coles or Woolworths and just pick up a couple of rashers of bacon at the deli if you prefer. This is bone-in skin of chicken thighs, and these are 4 fairly large chicken thighs, so we're going to work with that. Optional extra ingredient is apple, and I'm going to show you how we're going to use this later. It might sound a little bit strange. For our potato bake, we are going to need some milk, so we're going to be using that. In my pumpkin spinach salad, we're going to be using pumpkin. We're going to be using some feta cheese and some baby spinach as well. Here are my 4 boiled eggs that I'm using for the deviled eggs. I'm going to be using, instead of sour cream, I'm going to use a tiny bit of yogurt from my fridge, but you could make it without if you needed to as well. And then we've got our leek and our potatoes for the potato oven bake. And for my dessert, I'm going to need some eggs. I'm going to need a can of sweetened condensed milk. I just got this from Aldi. You can get it in any supermarket pretty much. We're using some shredded coconut, and we're going to need a couple of tablespoons of butter. So this is, you're not even going to need, it's going to be less than half a small pack of butter. And I forgot to include strawberries. Let me get them. So for our dessert, we're celebrating today with some fresh strawberries. You could use frozen fruit, you could use canned fruit, you could use other options if you wanted to save a bit of money, but we're gonna splurge and use some fresh strawberries to go with the cake. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna start roasting this pumpkin, and then I'm gonna get the cake all mixed up and in the oven. I've got my oven preheating at 180, and I'm just gonna double check my 2 recipes to make sure that that will work. So let's dive in and start cooking. Okay, and I have cut up my half a butternut pumpkin. You could use Kent, you could use other pumpkin if you prefer. I prefer butternut. I just think it turns out really well. Now I've cut this in small sort of bite-sized portions. We're just going to toss this with some oil, salt and pepper, and chuck it in our oven. And the reason I want to start with this is I want it to cool a little bit. I don't want to serve it warm with my spinach. So I'm just going to get this into an oven-safe dish and get that going, and then I'll start on the cake. So my pumpkin is now in the oven, and we're going to set a timer. Alexa, set timer for 25 minutes.
25 minutes, starting now.
Let me know if your Alexa just started talking to you as well. Now let's get on to the cake. It's a really amazing one. I got this recipe from my mother-in-law, who got it from someone else, but I haven't been able to find it online, so I added it to my blog, so it will be linked down below this video. But it is the simplest cake. 4 ingredients. We're going to use some egg, some coconut, some butter, and some sweetened condensed milk. That's it. So let's mix all that up and get it into my oven. And that is potentially the easiest cake batter in the world to put together. So I've just greased this ever so slightly. Don't really need to do very much with it. And I'm gonna find my big spatula. Now this dessert is absolutely delicious. I've made it quite a few times, and it's naturally gluten-free. It does definitely feed more than 4 people. So I'd say 4 very generous serves. But honestly, it probably easily could feed 6 people. In fact, I've fed 6 adults, especially because we're doing like those strawberries and stuff on the side. But same goes for the pumpkin, and you'll see a lot of the dishes here, like you could very comfortably feed 4 adults. You could probably feed more like 5 or 6 adults if you really wanted to, minus potentially the protein. So let me get this in the oven, and let's talk about some dessert options if this is not the cake for you. Now, these ingredients are not very expensive at all, and coconut, which I love. I use it in chia puddings, I use it in breakfast, I use it in other things. It's very inexpensive to buy coconut flakes or shredded coconut. But if that's not something that you like, there are certainly a lot of other desserts. So I looked around both Aldi and Woolies, and I found quite a few ready-made cake mixes. Some of them included icing. So I'll show you a few of the options here on the screen. But whether you are gluten-free or not, if you're not gluten-free, it's obviously cheaper. But there were so many different options for low-cost cake mixes, whether you prefer chocolate or vanilla. So this is a great option. Now you do need to look on the back of them because most of them do require egg, which I accounted for in this, butter, which I accounted for in this, and milk, which I did include in my shop for the full cream milk. So most cake mixes will need that. Sometimes you can get away with using water and eggs and omitting the butter or using some oil instead, but do have a look on the back of the packet. But there are so many inexpensive options there as well. Another type of dessert that would go really, really well with the strawberries or any kind of frozen berries is chocolate mousse. And you can often find in the baking aisle of your supermarket, you can find chocolate mousse mixes. You could also do more of like a jello. Jello is very inexpensive, very easy to whisk up and put in your fridge and make ahead of time. I personally would probably go the chocolate mousse route if I hadn't already baked this cake or had all the ingredients for this cake. But it just goes to show that you do not need an awful lot of ingredients, and some fresh fruit and berries goes a really long way. But if you were on a really tight budget and or if you had some frozen berries around, you could always do that as well. So my pumpkin and my cake is cooking away in the oven, which is amazing. And we're now going to get started on the potato bake. This is like a potato gratin, and there are so many different ways of doing it. But in my experience, because this type of potato bake is really common in Sweden where I'm from, there are two ways you can get them really beautiful and creamy and having the potato really nice and cooked through. Either you pre-boil your potato ever so slightly and then cut it up, slice it whilst it's warm and put it in the dish, which is usually the method I do. Your other method is to cut your potatoes super, super fine, like potato chip fine, super, super thin. I've got a ninja thingy where I could potentially slice them that thin, but I'm going to show you the way that I do it and have been doing it for years because it's a really nice, easy way to make the potato super creamy. You don't even need to peel the potato. I'm not going to peel it today. There's a lot of nutrients in the peel, but we do want to make sure that we wash our potatoes first. And then we're going to go ahead and pre-boil them so that they're not quite done and still soft enough that we can cut through them. So let's get prepping that and tick along with our yummy festive dinner. So like most things, the smaller we cut them, the quicker they will cook. But I also want them to hold a little bit of integrity so I can then slice them up into smaller pieces once they're cooked. So I think the easiest way for me to do this is to halve them. I've got just some water starting to come to a boil here with a strong pinch of salt in it, and that's about it. But we are just going to cut these now. And we're going to boil them until they're sort of fork tender but not completely done. And that way it's going to be very easy to cut them up and cook up the rest of this dinner. So I'm going to put the lid on that and get that to boil. Okay, so we've got stuff in the oven. My potatoes are coming to a boil, just hanging out there in the background. And normally for this potato bake, and I'll show it to you later, I would use full cream. But instead we're going to do a budget version of this dish and create a roux, which will need some butter, some flour, and you'll only need a sprinkle of flour. I'm going to use gluten-free because my husband is GF, but I'm assuming you have just a sprinkle of flour at home. If you don't, make sure that you do add flour as a basic ingredient to your shopping list because it really helps. And then we're going to use some of that milk to make a nice creamy sauce that's going to go with it. But for now, we're going to start preparing my deviled eggs. And this is such a simple thing to do. We're going to carefully peel our eggs and cut them up. I'm going to be using a tablespoon or two of my homemade yogurt. You could use creme fraiche, sour cream, whatever you want, or you could even leave it out. And then we're going to use some dill, salt, pepper, and mustard. That's pretty much it. So let me get going on this. All right, and that is all my eggs peeled. In my experience, if you put them in an ice bath straight after they're done cooking, A, you get the texture of the yolk that you like, and B, they're a lot easier to peel later on. So that's why I did this earlier this morning. So now I'm just going to take a very sharp knife and, well, they're a bit gooey in the middle, that's okay. You can hard boil them a little bit more than you normally would otherwise. So we're just going to try to carefully get all the yolk out. We'll see if we need to use a lot of yogurt. We might actually be fine without, but we're just gonna scrape this out. I could have probably boiled these just a hair longer. Don't really want to damage this. Let's see. Here we go. Practice our patience, making sure that we go carefully. All right. And now we're just going to do that for all of them. Okay, there we go. Messy business. Not Pinterest perfect, but we have hollowed out all of our eggs. And now all I'm going to do is quickly wash my hands, and then we're going to mix some things into this bowl. Okay, so my potatoes are coming to a boil here in the background, and we're just going to start now by adding a little bit of salt and pepper. And I'm just using Dijon mustard today. You can use any kind of mustard that you like. Probably not a whole grain mustard, wouldn't really go, but you know, we can try and see what we like. Now, I personally absolutely love dill, so I'm gonna do a little bit of dill. And actually, I'm also gonna grab a little bit of lemon juice. You could obviously use fresh lemon if you had that on hand, but I'm just gonna use a tiny dribble of this because I find that lemon along with some dill just goes beautifully. And I'm just gonna add the tiniest bit of yogurt. Like I said, you could use sour cream. I make my own yogurt if you're new to the channel, and I will link a video below where I show you how to make this. It's very, very simple. So let's just go ahead and mix this up and see what texture we get to. Nice flavors in that. Now, to make this look nice, we're actually gonna spritz it in using a plastic bag. If you didn't really care as much about presentation, you could definitely just scoop it in with a spoon. So I might have a go with the scooping first and see how that works. And if that doesn't look good, then we'll do it the other way. Well, that wasn't too bad. I've got a little bit of this mixture left, but what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and put these in the fridge so they can set, and then we're gonna present them nicely for later. Okay, lots of things happening, but my potatoes are mostly boiled, so they're now soft enough that I can cut them, but they're not completely cooked yet, which is fine because they're gonna cook in the oven dish with some of that leek and that sauce that we're about to make in the oven. So first up, I'm gonna cut all these potatoes up. I could have probably gone 5 potatoes because these were pretty large, but I'm gonna quickly go ahead and cut these up and get them in that oven dish. So I'll see you in a second. All right, my kitchen's starting to look like a mess, but there are my potatoes, and I'm having to charge my camera because the battery's about to die. But this might not look like much. It's actually an awful lot of food. It's way more than 4 people's worth because I always over cater. But the beautiful thing about this dish is you can also prepare it the night before and just let it cool and cover it up with some foil and then reheat it on the day of. It's sometimes almost better the day of. So now we're gonna get started on the leeks and the sauce that I'm gonna go into this, and then we're gonna get it in the oven. All right, my kitchen is getting very warm. I'm very sweaty, but my potatoes are now in the oven. I have another oven dish back here, which is lined with baking paper. And now we're gonna do the most experimental of all the dishes. And I had to stop and clean up. I'll show you some footage here. It's madness in my kitchen. This happens when you cook more than one dish at the same time. Now, I found a recipe for chicken thigh, which I have, and bacon, which I have, and to cook that in the oven, but more like with a cayenne kind of spicy thing. Now, I love apples, so I've grated up half an apple, and I'm gonna try a different type of recipe. It may not turn out as good as I thought, and normally I recommend trying things before you serve it to other people. But essentially the gist of this recipe was paprika, salt, pepper, cayenne, brown sugar, and plain flour. But I'm gonna omit the other seasonings. I'm gonna do salt, pepper, and I'm gonna do some plain gluten-free flour and some brown sugar and some apple. And then we're gonna wrap these chickens up. I have a feeling it'll work because apple is good, bacon is good. I think it'll work. The flavors might be too complex, but I kept that potato bake really bland, as you saw. So it's basically just salt, pepper, leek, tiny bit of garlic powder in there. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna try apple on 2 of them and 2 of them without apple, and we'll do the verdict of which ones were nicer. Anywho, let me assemble this madness and put it all together and get it in the oven. Okay, what is life without a little bit of experimentation? So here is the original recommendation in this recipe, which will be linked below, and here is my apple concoction. So I'm now gonna do 2 with and 2 without apple, and we're gonna get them into that oven dish and start cooking them in the oven. Okay, so there is our experiment. 4 chicken bone-in thigh fillets ready to go in the oven, and they need to cook at 200 Celsius in a fan-forced oven for about 25 minutes or so. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. I'm gonna pop this in and start cleaning up this madness over here. Also, for the record, streaky bacon would definitely have been the way to go. This bacon kind of fell apart a little bit, but hey, working with what we have, let's see how it turns out. All right, I am warm. It's a very warm day outside. I chose an interesting day to have my oven running, but I'm so looking forward to tucking into this. We will give you the verdict after we've tasted all of these things, but it's looking wonderful. And I will put all the prices together for you as well. Now for your protein, I found some really good clearance chicken at Woolworths that you could have bought and frozen, which would have been even cheaper than doing this chicken bacon thing. You could have done a potato salad. I have a recipe for a really simple but delicious potato salad over in my blog. If it was cold outside, you could have done a green bean casserole or something like that instead of the pumpkin salad that I did. But all in all, I'm pretty excited to tuck into this. My husband is in the background looking very hungry, so I think he's very excited as well. But I will see you in a second when we've taste tested everything and give you the final verdict. So it's the next day and we ended up having a wonderful meal last night. I actually ended up turning the camera off and just connecting with my husband. We both had pretty long days, and as you could tell, I was cooking for a fair bit. It probably took me about an hour and a bit all up to prepare everything, probably an hour and a half. So not a massive prep thing or anything, but obviously if we were having guests, I would have had to stop where I was, keep everything warm and kind of go have a shower and get ready and get dressed up for a festive occasion. But the great thing with that potato bake is you can make it beforehand. Same with the salad, you can make everything beforehand and dress it, and the same with the deviled eggs. So a lot of the things would actually be totally fine to prepare a little bit earlier and have ready. But we loved this meal. My husband loved all of it. I asked him what the favorite part was and he couldn't really pick because he liked them all, and I would agree, I liked all of them. I think it worked really well. The flavors worked really well. So how did I go with my crazy chicken experiment then? Well, actually it turned out really, really good. The apple one was lovely and the more plain one was really lovely as well. We both enjoyed it, and I think the apple and the sweetness of the apple with the bacon and the chicken worked really, really well. So definitely not a mandatory for this dish, but if you have an apple on hand, I only ended up using half of an apple, so like 50 cents worth of food. Yeah, so I can highly recommend that you give it a go. And we had so much left over, so this could have easily fed 4 people, very generous portions. But I would say, yeah, maybe 4 to 5 people, but obviously depending on the protein that you used. And how did we go with the cost for this budget-friendly, not extreme budget, but budget-friendly holiday meal? Well, all the ingredients that I cooked up that you saw ended up, minus flour and some very basic household things, ended up costing $35.22. So that included everything that I cooked up and the ingredients that I used in the cake, etc. And that works out to just under $9, $8.81 per person. And look, I think for a 3-course meal, that is not a bad outcome. Naturally, you could have done only one side and have some bread or some cheaper fillers, but I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really nutritious. It felt really wholesome, and I'm very happy with it. Now, a couple of options that you could have done to bring your cost down slightly. If you would have done a roast chicken, I found this roast chicken at Woolies for $5.69 on clearance. So even if this was a few weeks before the holidays, you could have bought this, frozen the whole chicken exactly as it was, and then just defrosted it slowly in your fridge 1 to 2 days prior and cooking it up. Then the whole meal, including the things that I cooked, but replacing our bacon chicken with a roast chicken, would have cost you $30.22. So for $30, you could do a 3-course feast for 4 people, which I think is pretty impressive. And again, you could probably do slightly less potato. I always go overboard on the potato. Another really budget-friendly option I found was this ham, this leg ham from Aldi, which was $13.68. And that would have taken the whole meal to $38.21. So a little bit more than I spent, but that would be a good option. If you wanted to, you could have also gone for, I saw at my Aldi, they had whole turkey. Now this would obviously feed a lot more than 4 people, so you would have leftovers for days, but that would have taken your whole holiday feast to $54.52. And I reckon with a whole turkey, you could have fed 5 people, because I had plenty of sides, I had plenty of desserts. You could maybe even feed 5 or maybe even 6 people in a stretch, especially if you've got kids, for $54. So that's not too bad. Aldi had some other options as well. They had a stuffed turkey breast roast, which was $18.99, taking our whole meal to about $45. And they also had the stuffed turkey breast roll, which was $15.99. These were all frozen, so you could easily buy them, put them in your freezer and take them out closer to Christmas. And that would take you to $40.52. So much of a muchness, really. But I think in the end of the day, I'm really happy with $35 for 4 people. And we're going to be having leftovers now for at least a day and a bit. And I'm actually really excited about that. So there is our holiday meal for 4 people. If you are struggling with food insecurities or finances leading up to the holidays, or any time of year you watch this video, I just recommend that you reach out to councils, soup kitchens, community pantries. Just Google in your area what's available. There is a lot more support than you might realize. And this is not necessarily just a Christmas/New Year's holiday feast, I reckon. I think this meal is a really great one to recreate any time of year. But obviously the pumpkin and the apple and the kind of chicken and bacon situation is possibly a little bit more geared towards this festive season. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you haven't already, and let me know down there if you end up cooking any of these items. I would love to hear from you in the comments, and I appreciate each and every one of you.